Afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Block Island Times and the Block Island Residents Association, I'm happy to welcome a really good crowd. I was worried that we were going to have maybe either 6 people, on this wonderful day, and really gratified to see that we have a really great turnout for what I think is a pretty important event. We are hoping that we can have some good exchange today. I do want to kind of go over a few of our sort of house rules and how we're going to handle this. There's no microphone stand up there, so this will not be a soapbox opportunity for any of you, regretfully. But we want to moderate questions. We want to encourage questions from all of you. And you may ask questions of an individual, you may ask questions of the entire group, or you can ask questions of, you see on the cards, there's a kind of a specific way that you can kind of check the town council candidates, as well as first and second warden, or one individual. This is the group that is with us today. Unfortunately, Filippi let me know this afternoon that he was not able to attend due to someone in his family had COVID, so asked that he was needing to quarantine. So this will be the group for today. So there won't be any questions for Steve. I think that's what we're going to start with. I'm going to let the candidates introduce themselves. I'm going to give each one just a couple of minutes to address on an overall basis their position, their platform, their priorities. So we're going to start with that. Hopefully you've gotten the instruction about questions. So if you've handed in questions, we'll start sorting and organizing those and bringing those forward. And we'll try to ask as many as possible. We're going to try to moderate them. If there are duplicates, we're going to try to focus on the key topic. So I'm sure that there may be similar questions for more than one person. So we will do our best to moderate and to get as many questions as possible. There are some refreshments, some cookies and cakes on the back table, thanks to a few volunteers, including my wife, Lynn. So thank you, and others who did some baking for us. So, feel free to get up and have a snack if you would like. There's also water available for anyone. Any questions from the audience before we get started? Okay, I'll take that as a no. And by the way, we are streaming this on Zoom. So this is a live Zoom meeting that is in place today. That will be recorded and we will have a link. So we will post and publish that link. So if there's anyone that you want to share this session with, you can certainly pass the Zoom link on. We also will have this posted on the BIRA Facebook page. So if you happen to be on Facebook, BIRA's page will have the session. It is streaming live on the Facebook page as well. Okay, so without further ado, I want to turn to my left. I'm going to start with Keith, and we're going to go down the aisle, and I'm going to give each of you 3 minutes maybe to kind of introduce yourselves and really give us a highlight of what your priorities and your vision is for the coming couple of years.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Joe and Renee. I think this is important. How's the sound? Okay. I just need to move it closer. This is what I get the most text about on the town council. I can't hear you. So I didn't tell Molly I was going to do this, but I want to start with something, reading something that actually Molly O'Neill sent to me. Gosh, it's got to be 3 months ago now, and it's from a blog that she follows, and a guy named Jeff Siegler, who has this organization called Revitalize or Die, and he does a lot of work. It looks like in Western Pennsylvania, believe it or not, with these downtowns and other areas that have struggles, not the same in any way, but some of this stuff is extraordinary, and I'd be happy to send you the link to the website because it's interesting. Here's what he says, and this really rang true with me. Be very careful in letting your standards decline. Standards, like a retaining wall, are up against constant pressure. There are always forces at work to see them fall, yet it takes a constant commitment and effort to ensure they remain. They must be bolstered at times to continue to be effective, but once allowed to fall, the prospect of restoring them is exponentially harder than the act of maintaining them. Standards matter. And this, since Molly sent it to me, I've sort of wanted to find an opportunity to repeat it because I think I find it so compelling when you use those words to view things like we have a ton of hardworking people in the community who experience extraordinary housing anxiety. And to me, that shouldn't be one of our community standards. We pull together regularly for extraordinary things. So it's not like it's something we can't do, whether it's the power company, or conservation, or school support, or broadband. We do have the capacity to do big things and do them well. But if there's an area where I sort of feel like we've failed over time, it's that we have failed to actively plan for a long-term and sustainable future for our community. Whether that is on things like senior services or land use, or frankly, what's the capacity of our island? And not just our natural resources capacity, but our capacity to tolerate this tremendous influx of people and all that they consume. So I think, as Joe asked us to focus on our priorities, my priority is to engage with that sort of long-term planning that I think is essential. And to me, that starts with a real community conversation around who we are and what we want to be. Now, my own feeling is that there's actually pretty remarkable consensus around that. It'll be in the mechanics where there are differences, but we all approach it in good faith. I haven't had a single comment really since I was elected that I would describe as being in bad faith. People really care. People love this community, and we can figure this out. And I think you'll be hearing more about that. Oh, okay. Thank you, guys. I want to be graceful about that. Is that the definition of grace?
Yvonne, Molly, you're next. And I'd like to just encourage everyone to keep this to about 3 minutes. Okay, I will time. All right,
I'm going to stand up because they said I should stand up, but I'll have to hold the whole thing. Hi, I'm Molly O'Neill, Margaret O'Neill on the ballot. I'm doing a write-in candidacy for town council. And I want to thank BIRA and the Block Island Times for having this function, and I'm super surprised at how many people are here, so I'm a little nervous. So I just want to say over the last 34 years, I've been a part of lots of different organizations, committees, groups on the island. I think I have a pretty broad understanding of the community. And yet I'm going to say I'm looking out here and I do not recognize everybody here. So I would say the community is ever evolving. And I specifically want to say that, you know, this community is really different than most mainland communities, right? So we have our year-round community, we have the people who were born here, we have the people who just moved here, but then we have this whole other part of our community that owns a home here and is only here for a couple months out of the year. People who don't own homes but would like to. it's a really flexible community. And I feel very strongly that every one of those groups within our community is just as important and should have a voice. So, you know, I had a woman who owns a home here this summer tell me that, you know, she was so upset about what happened in August, but she said, well, I can't speak to that. That's for you year-rounders to speak to. And if she's listening, I'd like to say, no, it's not. It's everybody's job to speak up and to take part. I'll say something super unpopular, which is, I think that looking at our ballot, as some of you may have already voted and you've seen our ballot and how sparse the candidates are on it. So I'm going to say that I think we owe Steve Filippi a big thank you, in the sense that he has inspired a lot of people to put their name in to run. Were it not for him being on the ballot, we would have one person running for 3 seats for town council. And that just speaks to our apathy. We've gotten apathetic, and that's a problem. And certainly COVID is part of that, but we need to pull it back together. We need to really get involved, and everyone, not just in this room, but everyone who's a member of this community needs to join up. Thank you.
Chris?
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? My name is Christopher Willi. I've lived in this community for 30 years. I live right across the street in one of the affordable homes that was built and finished in 2000. My kids go to school here. My wife's the tourism director. Her name's Jessica. A lot of you know me. I've done a lot of work in the community over the past 30 years. I've worked for the town for 17 years. I was on the town council for 4 years, school committee for 4 years. I sit on the planning board now. I'm familiar with all the issues. But I think there's from what I've heard so far, a cohesion in what some of us think are priorities. And one of them certainly is affordable and attainable housing. I could speak to that personally. And I was working on that during the 4 years I was sitting on the town council with some of the people up here. I want to continue to work on that. I'm an advocate for the school. I'm an advocate for police, fire, and rescue. I'm an advocate for small business, responsible small business. But I'm also acutely aware of what we call sustainability, and that's a very broad term. And I think there is light at the end of the tunnel. After a summer like this, or even let's say 2019, which was an anomaly, I think we have the people on island to address some of the issues that we've seen in the past. I don't think it's all grim. I think some smart people are out here. We just have to basically put our heads down and get to work. I think we could do a better job at the municipal level with communication. I constantly hear people didn't know about this, that, or the other. I have some ideas how to address that. I think the town could do a better job of getting its message out. I said this at a meeting in August when, you're dealing with corporations that have larger advertising budgets than the town for its boards and commissions. We should be taking every opportunity we have to get the message that we want as a town out to the general public. We haven't been doing that. So I think that's one of the objectives that we should focus on moving forward, just to get the message that we want out there. Because there's messages out there now that I don't think a lot of the people in this room want. So you have to combat that. I think messaging, optics, and communication are an important part.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. Neal?
Hey, everyone. So I'm Neal Murphy, probably the least known at the table. So I'll give you a quick bio on me. So Attended college, came out of college. I was an accountant right out of school. You've joked about millennials over time. Millennials will have 5 careers. Well, I was a millennial before there were millennials. So I was an accountant right out of school. I taught elementary school. I've owned my own businesses. The HR was the bulk of my career. I was ended as an executive for the company that owns Applebee's and IHOP. I was with them for 12 years. Prior to that, I was the SVP of HR for a global insurance broker. And then thought I was retiring to buy the Old Town Inn. And now I work twice as many hours as I ever did in the corporate world. So, but I'm loving every minute of it. You've gone by the inn, you know how hard I work on the property and really enjoy being part of the community. You know, whether it was the tag sale, the running group, and then obviously a little plug for tomorrow, our Halloween party. So please make the time to drop in. I think we're all aligned on a lot of stuff, what the priorities are. And my first one is affordable housing. I'd say the two that kind of go hand in hand is party atmosphere and family friendly. And it goes around how we market, what we want, and a little bit to what Keith said, which is what do we want to be when we grow up? He didn't quite say grow up, but and what I hear from a lot of people, and I have been talking to a lot of people, is a lot of people go to what we don't want to be versus what we want to be. And a lot of it, getting back to Stephen, has rallied people on what we don't want to be. But that's only good short term. It's what's the longer term plan we're on and what you want your kids or grandkids to see in life. And one of those things that Keith and I talked about when I decided to run as a write-in was succession planning. Something as a human resources executive I did for years, which is how do you make sure the corporation's ready for that next group to take over, whether they change jobs, retire, get fired, whatever it may be. And it's an important thing that the IMF started thinking about, not only getting the best talent on the right seats, but what don't we have in the pipeline and how do we invest in people on island, get them the experience they need to be prepared to take the role. And if we don't have the talent on island, how do we find it and attract it? So many of those things back to affordable housing, whether that's bringing talent in for a couple of years. We've seen what happens with the police chief and the various roles of getting housing. So with that, my commitment to all of you would be to work hard as I've worked on the inn for the town council.
Thank you, Neal.
Can everybody hear me? Jumping back. So a couple of things. One, my name is Sven Risom. Second warden, and I'm probably the first person to be second warden and run to be second warden versus one first. But I think that I really can fill this role and help everybody come together. And back to Chris's comment about communication, I think that's probably one of the most important elements of the next 2 years. How do we communicate as a town? How do we listen better? How do our organizations, whether it's the business community, how do they gain more of a voice and more of a cohesive voice? Conservation has clearly figured that out, but how do we all work together? And that gets to what I think is the most important element over the next 2 years, that's setting a vision. Where is it we're going? How are we going to get there? And what are the tools, whether that's zoning, planning, what's the structures to get there? And obviously, to Chris's comment, what don't we want to be a little bit? How do we sort of channel that away? Other key things in the next 2 years, there's been a lot of groundwork made in building relationships up in Providence. I hate the term upstate, but building relationships in Providence, and that becomes very important. Josh Saul, who's the housing czar, we will have a new state senator. We'll have a new state representative. You know, there's no question that Susan Sosnowski was a huge advocate for us. We've lost that as she moves to an area, new region. So how do we continue to build it? And why is that important? If you look at a number of both state and federal dollar allocations, we have gotten the short end of the stick. So we need to create more of a presence to be able to get the funding that we deserve as a community. And that includes senior programs, that includes the school, it includes the full gamut. Lastly, I do want to focus on infrastructure. And I raised this up with the town manager a while ago, and I think it's the most important. Our sewer, our water, our roads, our basic structures just need a lot of attention. And I think that's going to be coming up with water, it's going to be coming up with sewer. How do we make sure that we have the infrastructure that's geared to this new vision, where we're going to go, and then how do we do that? And that infrastructure has to support an understanding of congestion downtown. How do we fix New Harbor? You know, right now, New Harbor is sort of the next mess. If you ever tried to launch a boat off the boat ramp in the middle of the summer, you would understand that because you just stop all traffic. So as we have the vision, what's the infrastructure to get us there? And then how do we fit that into communication, both from the council to the town and amongst the organizations? Thank you.
Thank you, Sven. Martha.
Okay. I'm Martha Ball. Probably a lot of you know who I am. I've always lived here. I've always lived in the same place, down Mansion Road. I've seen a lot of things change.
Something on Block Island.
Quickly, I worked for the sewer plant. When they built the sewer, I literally know where the lines are buried. I chaired the zoning board during the 80s when we were under extraordinary development pressures. And unfortunately, that's a huge lesson. This kind of goes to what we see and what we don't see. You don't see everything we won. You see the one thing we lost. And that's life. That's what we deal with. Again, as everyone has said, there's not a great difference among where we all think we should be going. But the one overriding factor that I feel, and I've been involved in government for a long time, I've been involved in a lot of different things. We can all have individually the best platforms in the universe. Unless we can work together and we can work in a civil, constructive manner, we are not going to get things done. We've had a couple of really rough years between COVID and Zoom, which I'm going to go to my grave thinking is thing from hell. Hate Zoom. It's a necessary evil. Very heartened to see that not everybody gets technology perfect, because we sit there at the council table and get these texts, we can't hear you, we can't hear you. And like everybody else gets this right the first time. And this is a really relatively new thing for us. We've been thrown into a lot. But even, especially in the summertime, because I'm downtown in the summertime and I'm in a stationary place, I can hear the conversations. And just the tone of them has changed so much. And we've got to I don't think we can get anything really done really well unless we can completely remove ourselves from that and get back to working together, looking at what can we get done. Everybody wants to talk about bold strokes. Well, yeah, I'd rather get something done, and I'd rather get it done constructively and calmly, maybe. We have to be a little excited about things. I also think it's terribly important that we look at, I think it was Neal that said, what do we want to be, not what we don't want to be. Good. I was mispointing the wrong person. Hey, great, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Margaret.
And I need a clarification. There was something said earlier that there was only one person running for town council on the ballot. There were two. I'm one of them. So I really hope everybody remembers that it's not just Steve Filippi who's running for town council. My name is on the ballot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to turn to questions now, and we're going to ask these to be 2 minutes or less. If you don't have anything to add, it's okay to pass, okay? We don't want to have 6 people saying the same thing. We understand that. So for this first question is, and this is to all candidates. So I'm going to start over here with Keith. Relates to seniors. What provisions, if any, would you make for our ever increasing senior population now that more than 1/3 of the full year population are seniors?
So as I mentioned before the chime, I think planning for senior infrastructure is an essential part of the conversation we have to have soon. One thing I actually think I know I'm proud of, I think I would speak for Sven and Martha as well. For the first time, we're about to begin a hiring process for a human services director, which we've actually never had. We have people who do extraordinary work, but we, for example, we're pretty convinced miss out on a number of grants and funding opportunities for senior programs and services, simply because we're on the gerbil wheel, a hamster wheel, sort of providing services every day, but not really thinking about, kind of what the long-term infrastructure needs to look like. So I consider this a priority, and I don't think that's unique to me. I think you heard some component of this from everybody, or some portion of this from everybody. I do think that we may have an opportunity to match up our affordable housing objectives with some of our elder services objectives by actively promoting the 513 type affordable housing to have live-in caregivers, where you're solving two problems at once: an affordable housing challenge and a lack of caregiver challenge. But anyway, I'll let someone else speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Molly?
Okay, so I have a few thoughts on this. And I feel like it's always best when you have something that works for more than one purpose. So for seniors in the winter, it's difficult to get around. It can be really challenging. Some of them don't drive. And keep in mind that AARP thinks that I'm a senior. So, when they say 1/3 of the island, it really encompasses a major age group, a big age group. But I would love to see the town provide a bus in the summer that takes visitors from Old Harbor to our town beach, but then could be used in the winter to take seniors to, pick them up at their houses, take them to the senior lunches, could stop at the grocery store or the post office on the way back, so that someone who doesn't feel comfortable driving doesn't need to. They could be with their friends. It could be a social experience. So I think that would be a helpful idea. I know that our, so we did get redistricted. We did lose Sue Sosnowski as our state senator, but we have Alana DeMario now, who also represents Narragansett. And she's been out to visit the island, and she's been very active in this topic. Tina Spears, who is running to be our state representative, she has also been out to visit and has been looking at options upstate. So I think pursuing any ideas that come forward with these women would be a really good path.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chris?
So this topic has come up at the planning board level, specific to what Keith mentioned earlier with 513. And so the amendments to the ordinance actually were passed. And that was a good portion of the discussion, was enabling and making it easier for the 513 accessory buildings to be built or to be applied for, specifically for the potential for senior care workers to come out to the island, have a place to stay, or if they're full-time and stay on the island. So that was a large portion of the discussion, and fortunately that those amendments were passed 2 weeks ago, a couple weeks ago. But moving forward, this discussion was some time ago when I sat on the council, and I think it actually involved the inn we're in when it was for sale, and the idea was to purchase the inn and transform it into a senior care facility. And I think those types of ideas still have to be pursued. And not that those opportunities come up often, but being prepared so when the opportunities do come up, that you can capitalize on. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Neal.
So I'm happy to say that didn't happen because now I own it. So I think my background speaks a little different than other folks. So, and I don't know a lot of what has been done in the past or what has been thrown out. So that would be part of my, I call it onboarding to the town council to get a better understanding of it. But I think there's, Sven used the term vision. So in the corporate setting, and many of you have been there, there's 3 to 5 year type planning that goes into place that takes everyone into account as much as you can. And there's what Martha said, the easy things, the things that we can get done in the next year, the to-dos that are easily kind of slam dunks, but then there's the longer term planning. And with that comes the financial responsibility to manage expectations around what we're going to accomplish. So I like what everyone has said. Not knowing exactly what has been done in the past is important for me to get up to speed. But I think there's an opportunity because of the population, and let's face it, most folks in the room are getting older, and everyone will need the services, is what is sustainable for the island and what will get the best bang for the buck, both short term and long term. So I know that's a little bit of corporate speak, but as I get up to speed, I'll have more information to share.
Thank you.
First, I would like to commend Gloria and everybody for all the work they've done on the senior advisory and the group that has done an amazing job. And often and sometimes in spite of the town. With that said, there has been a tremendous shift, or I don't know, shift, but tremendous momentum last year. And I think to Neal's comment and others, we can continue that. Marianne mentioned that she's moving the hiring of this position up, trying to hopefully do it next month in November, December, and that will get us on the road quicker. Secondly, is then we need to build a support, whether that's funding support. I think in the budget coming up this year, this is going to be an important thing. When roughly 40% of the population is quote unquote seniors, and yes, I'm in it too, then we need to really focus on that. And then I think we need to think, when we look at the asset plan, around discussions that have been kicked and kicked and kicked, community centers, housing for caregivers, different programs as we think about the capital plan and how that's loaded. So congratulations or thank you to Gloria and everybody from the past. And now I think it needs to be a more community geared rather than just senior push. And how do we support this as a community? Thank you.
Thank you, and I can beat you all with the senior card, guys and lady. One of the things that concerns me a lot about a lot of things that are talked about is the increasing desire to structure everything. And I think, again, I'm going back to balance. We have to keep things that are organic and that work and not try to be sure everything has to be done according to this way. And I think we have to also acknowledge that we have this demographic block, and I've been watching this for a lot of years. We have folks who retire here who don't, and who was full intention of being here for the early years of their retirement, because people are living long, but we all know them. And sometimes I'll hear people say, oh, so-and-so moved, and I think, yeah, that I talked to them when they moved here, and that was their plan. They were never going to be here. That said, we do have facilities, and we have things that, I was talking to Dave Russo one day, and he said when the community center was built, one of the things that he envisioned was, Dave is not quite as old as I am, but he still has a kind of old-fashioned ideas. It would be like a drop-in center where people could just come and play board games and have someone sort of supervising and things like that. We've always had spaces like that. We seem to be losing them to commerce or to I'm not sure what. But as everyone has already mentioned, there are items in the budget and it's being worked on, it's being taken seriously.
Thank you, Martha. I want to stay with the same topic of support for seniors. A very specific question, so I'm going to ask you to answer it in a matter of a few seconds. Will you support the Senior Advisory Board budget request this coming year?
They haven't provided that to us, so I know we have a meeting with them tomorrow afternoon where we're supposed to get some meat on the bones in terms of their asks, but they provided us in a very good way with a sketch of the things that they would like to see, but without price tag. So I can't answer.
I'm going to ask if anyone would like to respond to that further. Okay, Mark.
I think there are a lot of probably most of the budgets that are submitted to us, we'd like to fund it in their entirety, but we obviously can't say what we're going to approve if somebody brings in a $2 million budget. That's an open question. We have a cap on taxes, which we've got to acknowledge exists. We've got to work within our means as well. We all talk about, well, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do something else, and we'll bond it. We're beginning to act like the state of Rhode Island, which just puts these bonding issues on. We all vote in favor of them because they sound like good things. And maybe we'll talk about the national government. We have to make everything, weigh everything against each other. It's an important issue, of course. So is the fire department. So is the police department. So is the school. It's pretty hard to come up with one that's not.
Okay, thank you, Martha. I'm going to ask one more, and then we're going to move on to other topics. But since this is certainly, there's a few seniors in the room today, so I want to make sure that we give them a fair shake. How would you begin to ensure long-term growth for all senior-related needs? And the next comment is, look at the group assembled here today. So I think the question is really your thoughts on a long-term strategy for the growth and support of this group.
I think the start of that is you have to determine where you want to be and where you want to go with it. Like and where does it end? Because there are some things that just are not, our medical center is our medical center. It's not going to be, Rhode Island Hospital. They've made an enormous amount of improvements. They have an enormous amount of improvements being made, but it's never going to be the Rhode Island Hospital. Okay. So when it comes to senior services, what is the end game? Where do you want to see it? And that's controlled by the group, the user group. What I heard at the top of it was what I mentioned earlier was a senior services center, or a place where somebody can go and have in-house care all the time. And that was proposed, I think, I want to say 5-6 years ago, that I remember seeing a formal proposal. So moving forward into the future, where where do you want to see it? And that's going to be determined by the folks that are going to be using it. I saw this often with when I was a recreation director. You know, we would put out a survey, and you know, the top of the survey was golf course. Like it's not going to happen. Right? You know, and then second down was a pool. You know, so there's pie in the sky wish list, but then there's the reality, and you have to determine what the wish list is, and then determine what the reality is, and then you have an achievable goal. There are some things that we just are not going to have. You know, we're never going to see a golf course. That's just the reality of it. We're never going to see jets land at the airport. Not while I'm here. So I think to start that discussion, or to start moving forward, looking into the future, you got to determine exactly what the wish list is, and then what's actually achieved.
Thank you, Chris. Sven.
We heard from, I think, everybody at the table that this is going to be the year to start to set a course and a vision. Where do we want to be in 5 years, 10 years? Neal mentioned the concept of planning, which we've discussed many times, but then you build a plan as to how to get to that vision. I'm assuming that all of you and everybody on the island is going to participate in this visioning work and participate in the planning work. So I look forward to the discussions. And then we do need to come down to nuts and bolts. You know, the budget is what it is. So much goes to school. So much, you know, by the time you're down, there's not a ton of money, but there is money in capital planning. There is money in looking at different grants, etc. So I think, in my opinion, the answer is in this room. We all need to participate in the vision work. We all need to participate in the planning work and make sure that the island is where we want to go. And given that 40% of the island is quote unquote seniors, then I assume it's going to support that population.
Thank you, Sven.
The one thing I'd add, and I will say it probably many times for you to hear, is steal shamelessly. So we are unique to the island, but a lot of communities are dealing with this and doing good jobs with it. So there's nothing wrong with taking an idea from whether it's one of the other islands or a town on the mainland, leveraging their knowledge and then twisting it so it fits our environment. So, you know, we all can come up with great ideas, but this topic has been, you know, in everyone's mind as Americans grow older. So there's great work being done somewhere. Do I know where it is? No, but we certainly can work as a team to find out what those models look like and implement some form of that model to work with Lock Island.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to respond to that?
What was the question?
So I did want to say, like, I agree with what Neal is saying. And I always think that we can.
Molly, let me just make sure that everyone knows what the question was.
Sure.
How would you begin to ensure long-term growth for all senior-related needs? So this question is about vision and strategy going forward to support seniors.
Okay. So I was going to say, on many topics, I think we can look directly at, you know, what is Nantucket facing, right? But that being said, Nantucket is 10 times our size. They have 10 times the population. Their graduating class at their school is 10 times ours, almost exactly. So like Chris said, we're not going to be able to do exactly what they do. They have a hospital, they have a retirement home. But we do need to look at what we can do. And it, again, involves everyone getting involved. I also think there are a lot of solutions that would benefit the entire community. We need a gym. We don't have a gym, and a gym would benefit every age group out here. And that's what we need to concentrate on. We need to concentrate on what's going to help everybody in this room, instead of saying what's going to help only people who are 80 and above, or only 90 and above, or 14 and below. I also think, as far as home health care aides go, that is a problem. It's really competitive to get the few very good ones that are out here. Perhaps we could come up with some plan in which housing that's utilized for town employees during the summer could be utilized in the off-season for home healthcare aides. It's much easier for them to take a ferry out here to make rounds in the summer. In the winter, the ferry schedule doesn't accommodate very many of us at all. So to be able to utilize that housing in the off-season so that a nurse or a caregiver could stay over for a couple of nights and make rounds in the winter, I think would be really helpful.
Thank you, Molly. Anyone else on this? Okay, I'm going to move on to a different topic. This one is enforcement. So the first question is, conventional wisdom says that there is no enforcement on many ordinances that already exist. Zoning, alcohol, signage. How would you address this issue?
So the reason I started my few minutes with that quote about standards is directly related to this. I think I think that as we move through, particularly the budget season, I think you're likely to see enforcement being a very consistent theme when we're making decisions about what to fund, how our town government is organized, et cetera. I use this. I mean, we're like the proverbial boiling frog, right? The temperature goes up every year, and at some point we're boiling, and we don't even know the temperature's been going up, and that's kind of what it felt like this summer. Unless we as a community have a seriousness of purpose about enforcement and making the kinds of investments we need to make. And, I also think it's really important to point out that we have people, Chris is one of them, Neal's another of them, who own businesses and do an extraordinarily responsible job. That's 99%, 99.9% of our business owners. So, I think, as I say, I agree that enforcement is a priority. I think we have to make it a priority and walk the walk in the budget process.
Thank you. Martha?
I'd like to speak. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh,
You're cut off.
hey, the way this thing's been running. One of the problems that we've had, and it may just be no, it's not my personal problem. It's everybody's problem. And I think we very much saw it last summer when we start talking about enforcement. It's sort of we're going from which thing is bothering us today, or which group is shouting the loudest. And it's almost like bright and shiny, bright and shiny, bright and shiny. Well, that was last week's topic. This is this week's topic. We've got to focus. We've got to prioritize. And this was one of the things the police chiefs have talked about in the past. Matt Moynihan was here a while, said that you can't put everything at the same level of priority. You have to give the people who are enforcing a certain amount of discretion to know what's really the most important thing to deal with, because otherwise you're going to lose your mind. And you're also going to have an enforcement officer for every single person on this island to follow everybody around. And I really felt it had happened in the course of a couple of weeks last summer when we were having meetings on this group that was going to be here and then gone the next week. And then another chaotic thing happened downtown. And we need to focus. We need to have, it's not so much, we have to stay focused. We just can't keep jumping all over the map and responding to whomever came in last and complained about their particular issue. Because we've all got things that annoy us.
Okay, thank you, Martha. Who else would like to respond to that? Chris?
So being involved in discussing and passing a number of ordinances over the years, this is always it's the bane of the whole process, is because we sit and we talk about changing an ordinance, and then at the end of it all, I bring up what's, is it enforceable, or the enforceability of it. And it's frustrating, honestly. It just came up with when the 513 amendment was passed a couple of weeks ago, enforceability. And to Martha's point, what priorities do we have as a community as far as what do you want enforced? Just because there's an amendment, or just because there's an ordinance that says something is illegal, or, it's like seatbelts. How many honestly wear your seatbelt on Block Island? Like 100% of the time. 100% of the time. How many have been pulled over? Probably in June when the state troopers show up. All right. Is it a priority for our local PD to pull people over on an island that's 20 miles an hour for seatbelts? Not necessarily. What is the priority, particularly in the summertime, for our enforcement officers? This goes for PD or our community service officers, any of it. What are the priorities? And it seems to ebb and flow depending on the squeakiest wheel. I think you need to listen to the professionals, and when it comes to police, listen to the chief of police, and if they need, if you want a certain thing enforced and it takes manpower, you need to provide that manpower. I think our police force has historically been undermanned. I don't think anybody can wrap their head around how hard it is to get a seasonal police officer to come out just for a few months, put them in a bunkhouse, and tell them to do their job the next day to the best of their ability. It's challenging.
Anyone else would like to respond? This is the issue of ordinances. Lack of enforcement of ordinances was the question. Molly?
So I think police aside,
Is your mic on? Pull forward.
As far as zoning ordinances go, I do believe that we could make some good steps in finding affordable housing if we were to cut down on the abuse of 513 units. We all know someone who has one who's not using it in the manner in which it was intended. And that creates less housing for year-round tenants. So I think that giving Town Hall the manpower that they need to enforce these things is important. I also think if we were to give our historic character the same kind of spotlight that we've given conservation out here, it would be tremendous. We have the most beautiful downtown, and in the summer, it is clogged up and junked up with illegal signs and neon signs and crap. And we just, I'm sorry, it just, like pop-up tents and all kinds of junk. And we have a beautiful downtown. People come here for our clean beaches, our historic character, and our conservation, our open space. And we should give each one of those things adequate respect.
Thank you. Anyone else? Otherwise, I'm going to move on. And this is apropos because this next question relates to small business. How do you intend to support small businesses, especially new businesses? I'm going to start over here with Sven, but we can move down the aisle, and I want these to be 30 seconds or less. Keith, I'm sorry.
I'm Keith, but I'd be happy to. Well, I think the essential component of supporting small business, large business, whatever size business is actively engaged communication between business owners, new business owners, and town. I'm not sure that we've done an especially good job of that and I intend to make that a priority.
Thank you. Molly, do you want to respond?
I think if we could get our Chamber of Commerce adequately functioning again, that would be a major step forward in this. But I agree, communication is a priority, and also getting the business owners to understand that it's not on the town to notify them of every single change. It's on the business owner to come to town meetings and follow the topics that revolve around their business.
Thank you. Chris?
So I just had this discussion with Keith a few days ago. Is I don't think the town can do a better job not only establishing relationships with businesses on the island, but the businesses can do the same thing. And I think calling together a regular meeting, if you would, or I think there is actually a effort to put certain members of the community together specific to liquor licenses, Steve.
Yes.
Just to engage those operators and representatives in how to address certain issues that come up. And I think that's proactive. I think often the town is reactive. So a little more proactivity, I think, would go a long way with small businesses.
Thank you. Neal?
Yeah, being a small business owner myself, obviously, I feel like communication is the key. You know, I was lucky enough to know lots of people on the island on how to connect to get stuff done and how to get information, but it was definitely a reach out rather than getting it proactively. So I think communication, and I do, sounds like, is there a small business forum?
This was specific to liquor license.
Okay.
That's kind of what I was.
But there could be a nice easy carve out for businesses.
And I think the chamber, like Molly said, the Chamber of Commerce in most towns plays an important role in that forum. Good year.
Sven?
Also, as a small business owner, when we started Northlight Fibers almost 13 years ago, our goal was to demonstrate that a year-round business could work. And I think we need to get more small businesses that are year-round, even if it's 2 people, 3 people. How do you build an economy? So with that gets to communication, with that gets to much better business community linkage. Some of that's going to be through the chamber, I hope. I also think the businesses, as well as the town, need to figure out communication vehicles, meaning a group, how do we meet often, how do we not surprise each other? And I think that we need to work more with the folks up in Providence, whether that's SCORE, which is seniors advising small businesses, or it's the Small Business Administration building programs out here to help small businesses beyond just the small tools and funding, but literally about leadership and new ideas and new developments.
I think technically most of the businesses out here qualify as small businesses, even though to us, they're not. I think we should play a welcoming role to anybody who comes in here. And I have been on the Historic District Commission a couple of times when a new owner came in. I said, we should meet with the council. And I think we had one meeting and then COVID happened. But when I suggested people just went, what are you talking about? Oh, we don't like somebody who bought something, and that's just not the right way to do anything. And I also think, I have said this before at other forums, I'm going to say this every time I get a microphone. We have got to make a much better effort of appreciating the people who do things right. And this summer, I asked a lot of people, what do you think of the way the Star department store looks? And they all said, wait, huh? I said, well, they rebuilt the front of it last year. And you can't tell. I mean, it's that good a job of restoration. And I think we should really make more of an effort to just put that on the record and celebrate when people do things right. And there's a little more encouragement for folks who might be thinking about doing something. Well, nobody's going to notice, nobody's going to care. And we do care. We care very much how people treat their properties, especially when they have landmark properties like that one. And like yours, Neal.
Thank you. I have three other kind of specific and unique questions. So I'd like to kind of go down and get a brief answer from each of you. And this first one has to do with harbors. Would you support a marine welcome or visitor center, public boat ramp and dock on the former overlook property now owned by the town and the land trust? Oh, sure. Just to be, Martha, I'll let you start. Thank you, Keith.
I thought there was a group looking into studies of what could be done on that property that will inform any future decision on that. Okay, there is a group looking into it, and we're not going to know until we have the results of that, what can be done. It's in the capital plan, and I think what people are really going to take the capital plan a little more seriously. We have a town manager who says, well, you voted it, we're going to do it. And an example is last year when the dump road was paved, people were saying, well, when did that get voted? And I said, well, at financial town meeting, folks. Actually, somebody on the council asked me that. It's embarrassing.
I think it might have been me. So on this facility, I know the facilities director has been working on it, leading the effort. I am in support of it, as I've been consistently. I think it's going to be an asset to folks that live here, folks that visit, and the voting community, which is quite large. The bathymetric studies, which means the studies of the water outside, going actually from the boat basin over to Champlain's, have been completed, as well as wetland studies, where to put it, what to do, how to look at it. Those things are all actually coming down the road. And I think it's a very exciting opportunity for the island.
My answer would be yes, ditto to what they've said.
Chris.
Listen, my history is on that harbor. I was the assistant harbor master. I was the harbor master. I proposed, I don't know how many years, a new harbor center. So it's a no-brainer. If we own the land, do it. Into what? Get as far as facility, voters needs first, and then voters and harbors, the department itself first, and then we can go beyond that. But it's overdue, considering we're a premier destination in New England. I'm gonna say actually the East Coast. Anybody that's been voting knows that we are in the top 5 destinations, particularly in New England. And our services are kind of embarrassing. I mean, the dinghy dock, just wrap your head around that. The dinghy dock is a big deal. And that happened not very long ago. This is 2022. I've been working on that harbor since 1991. The dinghy dock was the biggest improvement in that long, which is astounding, astoundingly sad.
Thank you, Chris. Molly, you want to respond?
I agree with everything Chris just said, but I also want to point out that is what the voters were voting for when they approved that bond, and so yeah, I would definitely support what the voters voted for.
Thank you. And Sven, or is it?
Keith, this is Keith again. I think I don't want to be presumptuous, but I think Chris and I are the two people who have actually worked collecting fees from transient customers on the town moorings. And embarrassing is the word when someone comes with an entire family and says, where do we take a shower? And we say, well, you take the kids off the boat, call the launch, pay for the launch, take the kids off the boat and walk to the beach and you can take a shower. So yeah, we've got to do that.
All right, thank you. Next quick question is relates to traffic and parking. Much has been discussed about the lack of parking and congestion on the island roads. Are we at a point where we need to think about limiting the number of vehicles on the island? And I'll go back to Martha.
Well, Well, thank you for reminding me. I knew there was something I read in the Nantucket paper this week. And it was Nantucket's traffic problems. And everyone says, well, we should have the steamship authority and we wouldn't have these problems. And Nantucket's, the quote was, they're bringing more cars, we're not building more roads. And they're trying to figure it out too. The problem is when you start looking to other places, you find out, oh my God, they're not any better off than we are. It's an issue. The cars are getting bigger and bigger. And that's, you know, I said that 20 years ago, everybody laughed at me and they are folks. And they have become, and it's a small town, it's an old town. We're not going to have super highways out here. But it gets back to the same problem you come up against every time we talk about virtually anything. There are too many cars that come in the summer. Oh, I want a boat. I want a car reservation when I want it. We need more ferries. We need fewer ferries. We don't want anybody to come over here. Come on, we all know it's true. Let's just admit it. I want to get off as much as anybody else when I want to go. And I don't even know where we'd put parking. I'm not sure. I'd like in a perfect world, we'd have a beach bus. Have people gotten so spoiled they have to be, well, I'm going in 15 minutes. I don't want to go now, or I don't want to wait 15 minutes. And the one thing that makes me bonkers, we have this huge industry out here that always seems to get overlooked when people are talking about what causes stress on the infrastructure. And that is this huge rental market out there where people have houses with 12 people and 6 or 8 cars, or 18 people and 10 cars, you know, these crazy numbers. And until we all acknowledge this is an island-wide, everybody's involved in this. Everybody, we're not going to build a parking garage, maybe.
Thank you, Martha. So the question is, would you consider a limit on number of cars? That's really what we're asking. Sven, you want to?
Yeah, just real briefly. First of all, this has been a big topic for years. It will continue to be a big topic. Cars are getting bigger. I think there are ways to start to address this in small ways, i.e., how do we get renters to not have 5 cars at their house when they're renting because it's cheaper than parking over at Point Judith. And so they're bringing all the cars over. And we all know that suddenly when the 17-year-old wants to go and get something and somebody's at the beach, that more than one car is being used, right? They're using a lot of those cars. That causes congestion. Enforcement is an issue with that. And we talked about that before, so I don't want to belabor it. But I think we need to have small pieces to tell, you know, Interstate's a private company. So we have to recognize that. And we have to then figure out how to make these small steps to actually have a big impact.
Yeah, clearly the rental, if anyone drove on Center Road, there was a house rented all summer and you drove by it and there were 8 to 10 cars at the house. So there has to be a solution. And again, not knowing what's been talked about in the past, I'm a little out of my depth, but I think that is a big opportunity for us to be able to curtail the number of cars. That aside, being an islander, I can't even go downtown and park and eat. You know, I'm parking at a friend's house, 3 sisters, through a friend of mine. Like, it stops me from going downtown to spend money as an islander. So downtown has to have some sort of fix. And I know you threw out as a joke parking garage, but something's got to come up with just the basic opportunity for enough parking, let alone during the July and August crunch. So again, I would turn to the people at the table, what's been looked at in the past and how do we resurrect that? I know there was the RIPTA bus, the beach bus has been thrown out. So these are all solutions that die on the vine somewhere. So how do we push some of these things through to make them help solve problems?
Thank you. Chris, do you want to?
So, yeah, this is another old topic, and limiting cars coming over. Let's just look at the feasibility of doing certain things. How are you going to do that? And then what are the repercussions of that going to be? We have, when Ed Roberts was a town manager, one of my priorities for him was to establish relationships with Narragansett town manager and Narragansett town council, because we affect that downtown Galilee area more than visitors to the beach do, I would say, down there. And if we were to start entertaining the topic of limiting cars, we first have to establish what's going to happen. Like, you can't just throw your hands up in the air and say, oh, it's not going to, who cares what happens to them? No, they're going to be parking on the mainland, and that affects our neighbors, and that just isn't, I don't think it's good business. So you have to establish a solution before you start getting rid of something. And if the more cars is what you want to get rid of, then look at, you know, what's going to happen if you do that. The other thing that was brought up is, why are you going downtown? Someone asked me, why do you go downtown? I drive through town 6, 7, 8 times a day. I'm used to it. It doesn't bother me. But somebody that lives on the west side has to go to town and deal with congestion. They're going to the post office. All right. Well, maybe move the post office. That was a good suggestion. So there's a number of good suggestions. We just have to, you know, execute something.
Thank you, Chris. Molly?
Well, I mean, I agree. It's difficult to limit the number of cars, but I mean, no problem has one solution, right? So we'd have to like kind of nibble around the edges here and come up with lots of solutions. We need a tow lot. So we need someplace, we have one person who tows cars. He has nowhere to put those cars. So we essentially have nobody who can tow cars, right? So the town needs a tow lot so that we can enforce our laws, and we can tow those cars out. We need some solution for employees working downtown during the day, because I'm convinced the reason we have no parking downtown is because hundreds of employees go downtown at 8 o'clock in the morning and they leave at 8 o'clock at night, and their car takes up whatever parking place they found, but it's one that you can't park in the rest of the day. And whether or not they're getting a ticket kind of doesn't matter. They might be, as Neal said, they might be like parked at their friend's place, right? But now that person's other friends can't park in that spot, right? Everybody's secret spot is choked with another car that's immovable all day. So we need to solve that problem. I think we have to address a lot of other problems. I also think that about 20 years ago, I think Chris was on the recreation board with me at the time, but maybe not. But we put forward a proposal for a parking sticker. And maybe it's time to go back and look at that, because then at least there would be a revenue producer in order to come up with other solutions, right? So solutions that are going to cost us money, we would actually be having a revenue source to solve those problems. You know, whether it's to purchase a piece of land or hire more police officers to issue tickets or get a tow lot. So
thank you. Keith?
I think this question is part of why I was raising the planning, near-term and long-term planning, because right now, I don't know. I have a feeling that we are over capacity, and I think the parking situation is sort of a manifestation of that, if you will. The frustration over parking becomes sort of the straw man for people's frustration over our being too full, too crowded. And, you know, drive down Weldon's Way and tell me that we have something that's working in town. The answer is we are not. We do not. And unless we all together decide that, you know, to quote Network, we're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore, we're going to be putting up 4 no parking signs on Old Town Road because someone's frustrated that people are parking there. You know, that is not a plan.
Thank you. So number 3 of my rapid fire questions, brief answers, if you will, please. Many summer beach destinations require paid permits in exchange for using the beach. The funds that are received are applied to the maintenance of the beaches, enforcement of existing relevant local ordinances, including parking. Would you favor exploration of such an approach? Go ahead, Molly.
I think I already answered that, but that is part of what the plan that the recreation board put forward 20 years ago, there were 3 stages of that plan. One was just requiring a sticker for the Fred Benson Town Beach lot. The second stage of that was to require a sticker if you wanted to park anywhere in that lot, Mansion Beach or Scotch Beach, as long as along the Cornet Road. And the third stage of that was all of that and Old Harbor. At this point, I think if you were going to have a 4th stage, it would include New Harbor, because in the last 20 years, the parking in New Harbor has become as untenable as the parking in Old Harbor. I'm reversing that, but so you know, we have a problem. We need a solution.
Thank you.
No. We are an island of no private beaches. Right? We are public beaches. There isn't anywhere. I have a lot of fishermen come in my shop. Is there any place we're not allowed to go? And I love saying you can go anywhere you want, anywhere you can. There's public access all around this island for a reason. There's no private beaches. If you want to solve parking at the beach, why don't you try a little, readdress the public transportation? There's a number of ways to get around this island, and a lot of the island residents have figured out a way to do it cleverly without using a car. Public transportation, I think, is a big key to the parking issue at the beach, and the rec department can handle budgetarily, I think, the maintenance part. I sit on the rec board, by the way.
Thank you, Neal.
So the question was exploration. I'd be open to exploring it, but my gut would say Block Island's always had open beaches, and that's where I would like to stay, but I'd be open to exploring what's out there.
Very briefly, I'm not all that open to it. Sure, we can discuss. I think if there's stickers, it could be discussed around Old Harbor and New Harbor, not the beaches. I don't think there's a problem on the beaches. To my earliest comment, I think as we think about culture and who we want to be, beach access is critical to that. Openness, lack of stickers. I mean, there's an element of Block Island, which is the relaxed atmosphere that's respectful. And stickers starts to be, okay, are you blue or red or green or yellow? And I don't even want to go there. Downtown and New Harbor would be the 2 areas that I would explore if we had to explore.
Well, I drive the Neck Road every day, and I've really been rethinking this one. And I'm not even sure about paid parking as much as sticker parking. The problem is that whole stretch between town and Scotch is so off limits as far as CRMC goes to put in any kind of parking lot. And that's what we have to do. And if we could get a parking lot in that plane at some point, get the cars off the Neck Road. We've got our bike path, we've got our pedestrian way all the way to Scotch Beach. But you've got to put the cars somewhere, and there are going to be cars.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move in a different direction now. And the direction is the town council. So I have a couple of questions that relate to the members of the council. The first one is, what do you think is going to be your biggest struggle working together with the rest of the council, and how do you plan to support yourself? How do you plan to support yourself?
I have been sitting here thinking that I wish there were 6 members of the town council, because I think having this group up here actually makes me really optimistic. I think everyone here at this table probably should be in therapy, because we think too much about how town government should be working. But I don't struggle with people who have different ideas when they're presented well and respectful. I think that's the essence of our democracy. And Molly O'Neill and I served together on charter, and disagreed on things, and we emerged from that process as what I think is really good friends, and it can be done, and it ought to be done. To me, the critical part of this is not so much how we're going to get along, but how much townspeople are going to engage. Martha said something to me several months ago, and she sort of had a variation on it tonight that I think is really important. She said, it's only I while the campaign is going on. After that, it's we. And I think everybody at this table is very much a we, but the we includes a willingness on the part of people in town who are really concerned about stuff, engaging and telling us what their ideas are and being willing to put in the work. That's the struggle that I see.
Thank you. Molly.
Well, as Keith said, Keith and I worked together on the Charter Commission, which was a fantastic group of people. I've worked with Chris before, both on Charter Commission and Recreation Board and Lions Club, really well. So, I think I don't think anyone at this table would have a hard time working together. I appreciate that someone wants to ask, but I don't see any difficulty at all.
Thank you. Chris, do you want to?
No, and I struggle with why there would be. I mean, there's 5 people on the town council. You're going to get, it's business. If someone disagrees with you and they disagree with you, that's fine. Your job is to represent your constituency or your opinion or what you think. And, I voted no on a number of things that everybody else has voted yes for, just because I didn't necessarily agree with it. That's just, I don't know, that's business. It's part of being on the town council. You're there to represent a certain group, or maybe, not necessarily all of Block Island. There's plenty of people that don't want me representing them. It's just the way it is. There's plenty of people that do want me representing them. It's one of the reasons I ran, because I looked at the ballot. I didn't see anybody there that was necessarily representing all of my interests and all of my peer group's interests. So it's business, and I've worked with pretty much everybody up here in some capacity, except for Neal. I think they still like me.
Depends on the day.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to move to Neal. And again, the theme here is will there be a struggle? And if not, the challenge of working together as a council.
Yeah, not having intimate knowledge of how these guys work. Having worked in the corporate world for 30 years, having many long drawn out battles on initiatives, funding, whatever it might be, I'm always going to make my voice heard. And at the end of the day, move on, whether I win the decision or not. In the article that Renee wrote, I wrote about our rules should be for the greater good of the island, not our personal needs or our personal businesses. It's what's good for Block Island. So that's my thing.
Okay, thank you. Sven?
Very briefly, I don't see that there's any conflicts that aren't overcome. I think respect is critical, and we all have that. I want to bring up the point of engagement with the community in a big way. I can look in this room right now and pick the 4 or 5 people that come to town council meetings somewhat regularly. And there's more than 4 or 5 here. So in my opinion, this is about not just how we get along, but how you guys and all of us participate together. Because we are the community. We, this whole room, we, this island, not just 5 people.
Thank you, Sven.
I find the question troubling. Are people looking for a council that's going to work together for the betterment of their community? Or are they looking for drama and struggle and strife and fights? And I hope that I'm misreading this. I'm going to trust that I am. You have to work on getting along. You can't be cutting me off already. My God. We have to work on it sometimes. I mean, I've had to work with some of these people and getting along with them. But you do that. That's what you have to do if you want to get anything done.
Okay, thank you. We're sticking with the subject in general, and this has to do with conflicts of interest. How will you be an effective counselor when you have so many conflicts that will keep you from voting on some of the most important issues, such as mopeds, liquor, and so forth?
That's mine. I'll tell you.
This was addressed. This one, I apologize because this was addressed to Steve and to Chris. So you can answer it.
Conflicts of interest come up during every one of these, and there isn't anybody in the community that can sit up here and say they won't have a conflict of interest at some point, right? Molly has you have a taxi license. Martha has a taxi license. No, she doesn't. No more. Good for you. Momo had a taxi license. Andre had a food truck. I have a charter slip in Old Harbor, a restaurant bar, and
so clearly there are a lot of
so the conflicts of interest. The reason the Ethics Commission exists is so you can go to the Ethics Commission and ensure that there isn't a conflict when certain topics come up. I will say those conflicts, if they exist, don't necessarily prevent you from discussing or participating in the discussion, though. There's certain levels. And as long as far back as I can remember, there's always been a decision, or if someone had a potential conflict, they would go to the Ethics Commission and ask. And that's what they're there for. It's not necessarily, I don't necessarily view it as a bad thing. I think it's quite helpful to have people on a town council that have insight into certain topics that the rest of the council might not have, even though they can't vote.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm just going to make an observation that there was an earlier question about working with small business. I think the fact that there are always going to be a number of council people who have some connection with a business or otherwise. So it has the potential to be healthy dialogue on those issues. So I'm going to move to another topic, which is closed sessions. Do you think there should be more transparency and therefore less discussions in closed session and more updates on litigation provided to the community? I think Keith might want to be the first one.
Sure. I really strongly advocate for more transparency. I think actually, speaking of the charter, that was the essential philosophical underpinning of most of the charter changes that we proposed last time. I have learned a lot, though, in the last 2 years about the whole closed session business. And here's my philosophy on it. The fact that you can do it in closed session, in other words, the law permits you to do something in closed session, doesn't necessarily mean that you should do it in closed session. But by and large, things like updates on litigation, when you see those on the agenda, they really do involve things that would be damaging if the other side knew. But it's not about the community knowing about it. It's about the parties to whom you're adverse having access to the information. So, it's funny. I was just talking to the town clerk about what process we're going to use for and how quickly we can get new members of the council up to speed on some of the litigation issues, because they are, from the community's perspective, pretty opaque. But I'm not sure it's a solvable problem, given that you pretty much universally involve situations where you are actively adverse in court or in, sometimes the legislature to another party, and you can't really talk about that without damaging your responsibility to serve the town actively and capably.
Thank you, Keith. Would else like to respond to that?
I just real quick. That was that came up quite a bit during the 4 years I was with the town council, and the result was our attorney giving up at the end of the meeting a brief summary of what's going on with whatever pending litigation as best she could. Obviously, there's a very fine line. Certain lines you just can't cross. And that was the learning, like Keith alluded to, a learning experience with me, particularly with litigation. But I do 100% believe that we can be a little more transparent in letting taxpayers know what we're doing with their money, particularly when it comes to litigation.
Thank you. Martha, if you
Yeah,
will.
we've actually made a little more of an effort to have things open if they can be. And some of the things that were long-standing, really placeholders that we had to put on the agenda in case there was something to report are, glory be to God, over. And hopefully it won't be replaced by anything else that's going to last 19 years. And I think we're moving toward whatever we can disclose, we will. But let's just say it down the table. It's not about withholding information from the public. It's about protecting the interests of the public.
Okay. Thank you, Martha. All right, I've got two questions that relate to social services in different ways. And this first one is specific to mental health and substance use disorders. How do you hope to support those facing substance use disorders and mental health concerns? And I'm going to come back to Keith on this one.
Well, I don't think there's a person in the room who's not aware of the crises that we have in both those areas. I will say I've been doing everything I can, including recently doing participating in a seminar that the Rhode Island Department of Health did for community leaders around opioids. I think it was a real strength of actually former Chief Moynihan's on the opioid side of things. I think he was especially tuned in statewide and had actually pioneered a program that I think it was called Project Hope that paired treatment people in the community with community policing. It's one of these things where I'll just admit, I know it's a gigantic problem, or both mental health and substance abuse. I know that as a culture, we need to be more engaged and get better at nearly every aspect of it. And I am open to hearing ideas and making investments in that infrastructure. But I am not an expert who can say, what we need to do on opioids is X, Y, or Z, because I don't know, other than, wanting to embrace kindness, sensitivity, and a desire to get people well. I'm happy to work on it, and as I say, have sort of put the time in trying to learn about it.
Thank you. Molly, you want to respond?
I didn't hear the question. Sorry.
I'm sorry. How do you hope to support those facing substance use disorders and mental health concerns?
So I'll agree with Keith, not my area of expertise, but I would say we're lacking basic opportunities that people in other communities have that might go a long way towards preventing problems or easing them, such as we don't have a gym, we don't have a theater, we have a fabulous library that should get kudos all day long for providing programming and resources, but we need more. So we need places. There's no place for my son to go and meet up with his friends that isn't a bar. Or you and your friends, if you're not going to somebody's house. So it's a multi-age situation that we need to work on.
Thank you. Chris, do you want to respond?
I think when it comes to addiction, I think there are more opportunities or more help, if you would, for those that are conflicted with it or have an addiction, but not necessarily those that have a mental health issue. And I think out here, to what kind of alludes to what Molly said, is this, there are things that you can do as a community to help alleviate some of those, but at the same time, we don't have the resources on island that, to my knowledge, that can properly attend to or even provide opportunities for those that are having issues. I mean, as I know it, it's basically a referral to the mainland. That doesn't necessarily work. So I think that's an area that has to be explored. And I would assume working with the medical center is on solutions is where you would focus that discussion. But it is a problem. It's a problem in every community. It's becoming more and more apparent, prevailing, no matter what community people are from. It doesn't matter what demographic. Mental health is something that needs to be given a lot more attention.
Okay, I want to move on to Neal.
Yeah, I'd say ditto. I mean, I think there's an opportunity for us to uncover what else the state could provide to Block Island, and then the expanded use of the medical center. I don't know if that's written into any of their charter to expand on that, but it's an opportunity to look at it.
Okay.
I think we're all agreeing this new position around human resources and social services will be a big first step. I think we need to continue to prioritize it in the budget. A little bit to the medical center comment, they have done some amazing things over the last few years, building capabilities, and we need to then really partner up and figure out how to do it. I'm very focused on mental health personally for some experiential reasons, and I think we need to help both drug and alcohol abuse and addiction problems as well as mental health, and there are very different needs, and we need to be able to tackle that and support it.
Okay, thank you.
I do think there are more services available through the medical center than we're readily aware of. I think people tend to just want to say there's nothing there instead of asking, which is a big problem. That's an outreach problem. There's one thing that I remember after Gregor Smith died, his dad said, and this is about kids and drugs, and nobody ever seemed to pick up on it, that kids out here have way too much cash money, that there are summer employers especially who just pay cash, and kids have wads and wads and wads of cash instead of being paid through payroll, through checks, through and that sounds like, you know, low-hanging fruit, honestly. But I never forgot it. And this was a guy whose son had died, saying this was an observation that he had, of course, from growing up in a whole different time frame. But it was a little disconcerting because we look around and I'm the senior person, and kids just have so gosh darn much money today without a the cash is really tempting. And we're in a cash friendly town.
I want to move to my second part of the question related to social services. And this is a long question, so bear with me to translate a little bit. Given that there are tons of state and federally funded organizations and services that provide resources to the state, but not to the island, how are you going to ensure that those services and organizations know about us and are better able to support Block Island?
Well, that's a good question and a good point. I think that's part of the reason that the people who are on the council for the last budget advocated, as I said earlier, for a human services director, because I think we need to be, I think Sven said this and Neal may have said this, we need to be much more linked in areas of sort of broadly described as human services. I also think that I don't know, I think there are only a couple of people here who attended, but yesterday afternoon, the Rhode Island Coalition on Domestic Violence did an extraordinary 2-hour workshop walking through what resources are available, walking through sort of signs and trends. 2 members of the police force were there. I give Marianne Crawford, our town manager, a great deal of credit for this, because I think that was a long-winded way of saying it is actually starting to happen.
Okay. Thank you.
I think this is an area where Alana DeMario, who's our current state senator, and Tina Spears, who's running to be our state representative, could be enormously helpful. This is the field that Tina works in. And I think this is definitely an area where we have to rely on our state representatives.
Chris, do you want to respond to that?
Well, the funding of the human resource position, I think, is a major step, because a lot of these things take dedication of at least full-time or part-time of somebody to do it and to capitalize on the resources that and the money and the funding that's available. Yet a part-time grant writer, when I worked for the town, Heidi Tarbox, and she was worth the money, because it didn't matter what topic, any department head could go to her and say, this is what we need. And she would find or do her best to find the funding or the resource or the expert to talk to. If you're talking about mental health and addiction, and we have a human resource coordinator, I would assume that would fall under them. And that's a lot of the times, that is the one thing the one element that's missing out here is you need someone to spearhead all of it. It's not a town council. Spearhead all of it and go out and do the job they've been asked to do, and then provide the information to the community members that need it. And a lot of that's a huge element that's missing.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Neal.
Yeah, I think a good example is Chris's wife, Jess, who on the Tourism Council stays connected both at the state level, town level on what's going on, and it's leveraging a lot of that information for Block Island. So it's a dedicated person. So it sounds like we're down the road on having someone. So that should be
Thank you.
big asset.
Sven.
Yeah, I don't want to undervalue the importance of our state and House representatives. As Molly mentioned a minute ago, we have 2 new people coming on board. They're going to want to work with us. We already built up very good relationships, I think. And I think having somebody here, like Chris and Neal just mentioned, I think is going to be critical. But it is very, very important that we as a community continue to work with people in those funding groups, and that really deals with the capital. And if we sort of continue to isolate, don't get engaged, the money's just going to go elsewhere, and we won't get our fair share. So I think it's going to be a very important step in how do we capture our fair share. And by the way, that's significant because we haven't gotten very much to date.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess this is just kind of building on what, well, Chris in particular touched on. A lot, it feels like, and I'm expanding, it feels like a lot of a lot of questions that we're getting aren't questions of things that the council is able to do hands-on. We have a town manager, we've had this charter for 30 years, and sometimes I think, does anybody remember we have a different structure of government? And we have people that are hired, and that decision was made 30 years ago, we were going to go in that direction. And it's our job to support, give direction, create this, I hate the word vision, but vision, if you will, of where we want to go. But it's not up to us to do it. We have to provide the resources to hire the people to support the staff to do it. And we don't have the answers. We're not the experts on these things.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we are about at our time. So first of all, I want to thank all of you for your participation today, for your candid answers and working through quite a number of issues. So let's give them a round of applause. Just my own observation is having not attended as many in-person town council meetings as I probably should, but I do watch them quite a few virtually, and I'm amazed at the amount of time that all of the folks on the council end up giving. And I know what we see is only the tip of the iceberg, so it definitely requires commitment. And so I thank all of the candidates as well as current and future town council members for that commitment. A couple of things in closing. Just want to remind everyone of a few things. Keith and Sven are running respectively as first warden and second warden, and each of you is unopposed. But they are on the ballot for those positions. The remaining slots, there are 3 remaining slots, and there are 2 individuals that are on the ballot for town council seats, and those are Martha Ball and Steve Filippi. In addition, I just want to touch on the write-in process here. The other 3 folks that you have before you today are write-in candidates for town council seats. Their name will not be anywhere on the ballot. So it's important to understand that if you want to vote for one or more of those write-in candidates, you have to come equipped with a name and write it in. There won't be any name there. The name should be written accurately. I would suggest you take a card home if we have some extras. These are the correct ways that the folks' names are being used. So do your best to complete any write-ins accurately if you choose to do so. I think that wraps it up. So I want to call this meeting to a close. I thank you all for your participation. We had quite a number of great questions. I hope we've addressed most of them to your satisfaction. And I would encourage you all to spread the word about the election. If you haven't voted already, you certainly have the opportunity to do so between now and next week. And spread the word about the write-in candidates that you have before you, that so people know at least who the candidates are and are able to hopefully vote. Today's session will be available. We have it. This was on Zoom, so there will be a link, and we will be publishing that link shortly, so that anyone who wants to go back and look at and listen may do so. It also is appearing on the Block Island Residents Association Facebook page and will be available after today, actually. So thank you all.
Thank you.